Chapter 4. At Flourish and Floats. Life at Burrow was as different as possible from life on Private Drive. The Dursleys like everything neat and ordered. The Weasley's house buzzed with the strange and unexpected. Harry got a shock the first time he looked in the mirror over the kitchen mantelpiece, and it shouted, "Kept your shut in, Scruffy." The girl in the attic hall and dropped pipe whenever he felt things were getting too quiet, and small explosion from Fred and George's bedroom were considered perfectly normal. What Harry found most unusual about life at Ron's, however, wasn't the talking mirror on the checking call, was the fact that everybody there seemed to like him. Mrs. Weasley fused, however, the state of his shock and tried to force him to eat fourth helping at every meal. Mr. Weasley liked Harry to sit next to him at the dinner table so that he could bombard him with questions about life with muggles, asking him to explain how things like plug and the postal service work. Fascinating, though he would say as Harry talked him truly using a telephone. Ingenious, really? How many ways muggles have found of getting along without music. Harry heard from Hogwarts one sunny morning about a week after he had arrived at the Burrow. He and Ron went down to breakfast to find Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny already sitting at his table. The moment she saw Harry, Ginny accidentally knocked her porridge bowl to the floor with a loud clatter. He seemed very prone to knocking things over whenever Harry entered a room. She dived under the table to retrieve the bowl and emerged with her face glowing like a setting sun. Pretending he hadn't noticed this, Harry sat down and took the toast Mrs. Weasley offered him. "Letters from school," said Mr. Weasley, passing Harry and Ron identical envelope of yellowish parchment, addressed in the green ink. "Dumbledore already knew you are here, Harry. Doesn't miss a trick, that man. You two have got them too," he added, as Fred and George ambled in still in their pajamas. For a few minutes, there was silence as they all read their letters. Harry told him to catch the Hogwarts Express as usual from King's Cross Station on September 1st. There was always a list of new books he had need to the coming year. Second year students will require The Standard Book of Spells Grade 2 by Miranda Goswalk, Break with a Banshee by Gilderoy Lockhart, Guarding with Goals by Gilderoy Lockhart, Holding with Hag by Gilderoy Lockhart, Travel with Troll by Gilderoy Lockhart, Voyage with Vampires by Gilderoy Lockhart, Wandering with Werewolves by Gilderoy Lockhart, Year with the Yeti by Gilderoy Lockhart. Fred, who had finished his own list, peered over Harry's. "You have been told to get all Lockhart's book too," he said. "The new defense against the dark art teacher must be fan, but it's a witch." At this point, Fred caught his mother's eye and quickly behaved himself with the marmalade. "That's lot won't come cheap," said George with a quick look at his parents. "Lockhart's books are really expensive." "Well, we'll manage," said Mrs. Mosley. But she looked worried. "I expect we'll be able to pick up a lot of Guinness things second-hand." "Oh, are you starting at Hogwarts this year?" Harry asked Ginny. She nodded, blushing to the root of her flaming hair, and put her elbow in the buttered dish. Fortunately, no one saw this except Harry, because just then Ron's elder brother Percy walked in. He was already dressed, his Hogwarts perfectly bagged, pinned to his sweater vest. "Morning all," said Percy briskly. "Lovely day." He sat down in the only remaining chair but leaped up again almost immediately, pulling from underneath him a molting grey feather duster glass. That was what Harry thought it was until he saw that it was breathing error, said Ron, taking the limp owl from Percy and extracting a letter from under his wing. Finally, he's got Hermione's answer. I wrote to her saying we were going to try and rescue you from the Dursleys. He carried Errol to a perch just inside the back door and tried to stand him on it, but Errol flopped straight off again to Ron, laid him on the draining board instead, muttering pathetic. Then he ripped open Hermione's letter and read it loud. Dear Ron and Harry, if you are there, I hope everything went all right and that Harry is okay and that you didn't do anything illegal to get him out. Ron, because that would get Harry into trouble too. I have been really worried, and if Harry is alright, will you please let me know at once? Perhaps it will be better if you use a different owl because I think another delivery might finish your one off. I'm very busy with school, or of course. How can she be? Said Ron in horror. We are on vacation and we are going to London next Wednesday to buy my new books. Don't we meet in Diagon Alley? Let me know what's happening as soon as you can. Love from Hermione. Well, that fits in nicely. You can go and get all your things then too, said Mrs. Weasley, starting to clear the table, whatever you're all up to today. Ron, Fred, and George were planning to go up the hill to a small paddock, and the Weasley one was surrounded by trees that blocked it from view of the village below, meaning that they could practice Quidditch there as long as they didn't fly too high. They couldn't use the real Quidditch ball, which would have been hard to explain if they had escaped from flown away over the village. Instead, they threw apples for one another to catch. They took turns riding Harry's Nimbus 2000, which was easily the best broom. Ron's old shooting star was often outstripped by passing butterflies. 5 minutes later, they were marching up the hill. Broomsticks were over their shoulders. They asked Percy if he wanted to join them, but he had said he was busy. Harry had only seen Percy at meal time so far. He stayed shut in his room the rest of time. Wish I knew what he was up to, said Fred, flowing. He is not himself. His exam result came the day before you did. 12 owls and he hardly gloated at all. Ordinary wizarding level, George explained, seeing Harry's puzzled look. Bill got 12 too. If we are not careful, we'll have another head boy in the family. I don't think I could stand the same. Bill was the oldest Weasley brother. He and the next brother, Charlie, had already left Hogwarts. Harry had never met either of them, but knew what Charlie was in Romania studying dragon and Bill in Egypt working for Wizards Bank Gringotts. Don't know how Mom and Dad are going to afford all our school stuff this year, said George after a while. 5 sets of Lockhart books and 3 neat ropes and a wand. Everything. Harry said nothing. He felt a bit awkward. Stored in an underground vault at Gringotts in London was a small fortune that his parents had left him. Of course, it was only in the Wizardian world that he had money you couldn't use, gallon, sickle, and nuts. In Muggle shop, he had never mentioned his Gringotts bank account to the Dursleys. He didn't think their horror of anything connected with the magic world stretched to the large pile of gold. Mrs. Weasley woke them all early the following Wednesday. After a quick half a dozen bacon sandwiches each, they pulled on their coats, and Mrs. Weasley took a flower pot off the kitchen mantelpiece and peered inside. We are running low, Arthur, she signed. We'll have to buy some more today. Well, guess first. to you, Harry dear. And she offered him the flower pot. Harry stared at them, all watching him. What I supposed to do? He stammered. He's never traveled by flower powder, said Ron suddenly. Sorry, Harry, I forgot. Never, said Mr. Weasley. But how did you get to Diagon Alley to buy your school things last year? I went on the underground. Really? Said Mr. Weasley eagerly. There escaped? How exactly? Not now, Arthur, said Miss Weasley. Flow powder's a lot quicker, dear, but goodness me, if you have never used it before. He'll be all right, Mum, said Fred. Harry, watch us first. He took a pinch of glittering powder out of the flower pot, stepped up to the fire, and threw the powder into the flame. With a roar, the fire turned emerald green and rose higher than Fred, who stepped right into it, shouted Diagon Alley, and vanished. You must speak clearly, dear, Mrs. Weasley told Harry as George dipped his hand into the flower pot. And he's sure to get out at the right gear. Right what? Said Harry nervously as the fire roared and whipping George out of sight too. Well, there are an awful lot of wizards' fire to choose from. You know, but as long as you have spoken clearly, he'll be fine. Molly, don't force, said Mr. Weasley, helping himself to flow powder too. But dear, if he got lost, how would we ever explain to his aunt and uncle? They wouldn't mind, Harry reassured her. Dudley would think it was a brilliant joke if I got lost up a chimney. Don't worry about that. Well, all right, you go after Arthur, said Mrs. Weasley. Now, then you get into the fire, say where you are going, and keep your elbow tucked in, Ron advised, and your eyes shut, said Mrs. Weasley. The chute. Don't fret, said Ron, or you might fall all out of the wrong fireplace. But don't panic and get out too early. Wait until you see Fred and George. Trying hard to bear all this in mind, Harry took a pinch of flow powder and walked to the edge of the fire. He took a deep breath, scattered the powder in the flame, and stepped forward. The fire felt like a warm breeze. He opened his mouth and immediately swallowed a lot of hot ash. Diagon Alley, he coughed. It felt as though he were being sucked down a giant train. He seemed to be spinning very fast. The roaring in his ear was deafening. He tried to keep his eyes open, but the whirl of green flame made him feel sick. Something hard knocked his elbow and he tucked it tightly, still spinning and spinning. Now it felt as tough cold hands were slapping his face. Squinting through his glasses, he saw a broad stream of fireplaces and snatched glimpses of the rooms beyond. His bacon sandwich were churning inside him. He closed his eyes again, wishing it would stop, and then he fell face forward onto cold stone and felt the breath of his glasses stuck. Easy and brush convert him suit. He got gingerly to his feet, holding his broken glass up to his eyes. He was quite alone, but where he was, he had no idea. All he could tell was that he was standing in the stone fireplace of what looked like a large, dimly lit wizard shop, but nothing in here was ever likely to be on Hogwarts school list. A glass case nearby held a withered hand on the cushion of Bloomstead, pack of cards, and a straight glass eye, evil-looking mask stared down from the wall. An assortment of human bone lay upon the counter, and rusty spiked instrument hung from the ceiling. Onwards, the dark narrow street Harry could see through the dusty shop window was definitely not Diagon Alley. The sooner he got out of there, the better. No still stinging where it had hit the earth. Harry made his way swiftly and silently toward the door, but before he had got halfway toward it, two people appeared on the other side of the glass, and one of them was the very last person Harry wanted to meet when he was lost. Covered in soot and wearing broken glasses, Draco Malfoy. Harry looked quickly around and spotted a large black cabinet to his left. He shot inside it and pulled the door close, leaving a small crack to peer through. Second later, a bell clanged and Malfoy stepped into the shop. The man who followed could only be Draco's father. He had the same pale, pointed face and identical cold grey eyes. Mr. Malfoy closed the shop, looking lazily at the item on display, and rang a bell on the counter. Before turning to his son and saying, "Touch things, Draco," Malfoy, who had reached for the glass eye, said, "I thought you were going to buy me a present." "I said I would buy you a racing broom," said his father, drumming his finger on the counter. "What's the good of that if I'm not on the house team?" said Malfoy, looking sulky and bad-tempered. "Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year, special permission from Dumbledore so he could play for Gryffindor. He's not even that good, it's just because he's famous. Famous for having a stupid scar on his forehead." Malfoy went down to examine a shelf full of skulls. "Everyone thinks he is so smart, wonderful Potter with his scar and his broomstick." "You have told me this at last a dozen times already," said Mr. Malfoy, with a quilling look at his son. "And I would remind you that it is not prudent to appear less than fond of Harry Potter. Not when most of our kind regard him as the hero who made the Dark Lord disappear." Mr. Borgin, a stooping man, had appeared behind the counter, smoothing his greasy hair back from his face. "Mr. Malfoy, what a pleasure to see you again," said Mr. Borgin, in a voice as oily as his hair. "Delighted, and young Master Malfoy too. How may I be of assistance? I must have you just in today, and very reasonable price." "I'm not buying today, Mr. Borgin, but selling," said Mr. Malfoy. "Selling?" The smile faded slightly from Mr. Borgin's face. "You have heard, of course, that the Ministry is conducting more raids," said Mr. Malfoy, taking a roll of parchment from his inside pocket and unrevealed it for Mr. Borgin to read. "I have a few items at home that might embarrass me if the Ministry were to call." Mr. Borgin fixed a pair of eyes to his nose and looked down the list. "The Ministry wouldn't presume to trouble you, sir, surely?" Mr. Malfoy's lip curled. "I have not been visited yet." The name Malfoy still commands a certain respect, yet the Ministry grows ever more meddlesome. There are rumors how new Muggle Protection Act, no doubt that flea-bitten, Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley is behind it. Harry felt a hot surge of anger. "And as you see, certain of these potions might make it appear." "I understand, sir, of course," said Mr. Borgin. "Let me see. Can I have that?" interrupted Draco, pointed at the withered hand of its caution. The hand of glory," said Mr. Borgin, turning Mr. Malfoy's list and scurrying over the Draco. "Insert a candle and it give light only to the holder, the best friend of thieves and plunderers. Your son has fine taste, sir." "I hope my son will amount to more than a thief of a plunderer, Borgin," said Mr. Malfoy coldly. And Mr. Borgin said quickly, "No offense, sir. No offense meant." Though if his grade don't pick up, said Mr. Malfoy more coldly still, that may indeed be all he is fit for. It's my fault, retorted Draco. The teacher all have favored that Hermione Granger. I would have thought you had been ashamed that a girl of no wizard family beat you in every exam, snapped Mr. Malfoy. Ha! Said Harry under his breath, pleased to see Draco looking both absent and angry. It's the same all over, said Mr. Borgin in his oily house. Wizard's blood is counting for less everywhere. Not with me, said Mr. Malfoy, his long nostril flared. No, sir, nor with me, sir, said Mr. Borgin with a deep bow. In that case, perhaps we can return to my list, said Mr. Malfoy shortly. I'm in something of the hurry, Borgin. I have important business elsewhere today. They started to haggle. Harry watched nervously as Draco drew nearer and nearer to his hiding place. Examining the object for sale, Draco paused to examine a long coil of hangman's rope and to read shrinking the card topped on the magnificent necklace of opals caution. Do not touch, cursed has claimed the lives of 19 Mughal owner to date. Draco turned away as saw the cabinet right in front of him. He walked forward, he stretched out his hand for the handles. Done and said Mr. Malfoy at the counter, came Draco. Harry wiped his forehead on his sleeves as Draco turned away. Say to you, Mr. Borgin, I'll expect you at the manor tomorrow to pick up the coat. The moment the door has closed, Mr. Borgin dropped his oily manner. Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy. And if the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what hidden in your manner. Muttering darkly, Mr. Borgin disappeared into a back room. Harry waited for a minute in case he came back, then quietly as he could, slipped out of the cabinet, past the glass cases, and out of the shop door. Clutching his broken glasses to his face, Harry stared around. He had emerged into a dingy alleyway that seemed to be made up entirely of shop devoted to the dark art. The one he had just left, Borgin and Burke's, looked like the largest, but opposite was a nasty window display of shrunken head, and two doors down a large cage was alive with gigantic black spider. Two shabby-looking wizards were watching him from the shadow of a doorway, muttering to each other, feeling jumpy. Harry set off, trying to hold his glasses on straight and hoping against hope he had been able to find a way out of here. An old wooden street sign hanging over a shop selling potions candle told him he was in Nocturne Alley. This didn't help as Harry had never heard of such a place. He supposed to hadn't spoke clearly enough through his mouthful of ash. Back in the Weasley's fire, trying to stay calm, he wondered that to do. Not lost are you, my dear, said a voice in his ear, making him jump. An aged witch stood in front of him, holding a tray of what looking horrible like whole human fingernails. She leaned at him, showing mossy teeth. Harry backed away. I'm fine, thanks, he said. I'm just... Harry, what do you think you are doing down here? Harry's heart leaped. So did the witch. A lot of fingernail cascades down over her feet, and she cursed as the massive form of Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, came striding towards them, beetle black eyes flashing over his great bristled beard. Hagrid, Harry croaked in relief. I was lost. Flow powder. Hagrid seized Harry by the scruff of the neck and pulled him away from the witch. Knocking the tray right out of her hand, her stick followed them all the way along the twitch. Anyway, out into bright sunlight. Harry saw a familiar snow white marble building in the distance. God's bank. Hagrid had steered him right in Diagon Alley. You are a mess, said Hagrid gruffly, brushing shut off Harry so forcefully he nearly knocked him into a barrel of dragon dung outside the apothecary skullskin. Around Nocturne Alley, I don't know. Doggy place. Harry don't want no one to see you down here. I realize that, said Harry, ducking as Hagrid made to brush him off again. I told you I was lost. What were you doing down there anyway? I was looking for flesh-eating slug repellent, rolled Hagrid. They run the school cabbage, you not on your own. I'm staying with the Weasleys, but we got separated, Harry explained. I have got to go and find them. They set off together down the street. How come you never wrote back to me? Said Hagrid as Harry jogged alongside him. He had to take 3 steps to every side of Hagrid's enormous boot. Harry explained all about Dobby and the Dursleys. Lousy muggles, growled Hagrid. If I had been no, Harry, over here. Harry looked up and saw Hermione Granger standing at the top of the white flight of the step to Gregnott's. She ran down to meet them, her brushy brown hairs flying behind her. What happened to your glasses? Hello, Hagrid. Oh, it's wonderful to see you two again. Are you coming into Gringotts, Harry? As soon as I have found the Weasleys, said Harry. Yeah, you won't have long to wait, Hagrid said with a grin. Harry and Hermione looked around, sprinting up the crowd street were Ron, Fred, George, Percy, and Mr. Weasley. Harry, Mr. Weasley panted. We hoped you had only gone on grade too far. He mopped his glistening bad patch. Molly's frantic. She's coming now. Where did you came out? Ron asked. Nocturne Alley, said Hagrid grimly. Excellent, said Fred and George together. We have never been allowed in, said Ron enviously. I should really well think not, growled Hagrid. Mrs. Weasley now come galloping into view, her handbag swing wildly in one hand, Ginny just clinging onto the other. Oh, Harry, oh, my dear, you could have been anywhere. Gasping for breath, she pulled a large cloth brush out of her bag and began sweeping off the soot Hagrid hadn't managed to beat away. Mr. Weasley took Harry's glasses, gave them a tap on his wand, and returned them good as new. Well, got to be off, said Hagrid, who was having his hand wrung by Miss Weasley. Nocturne Alley. If you hadn't found him, Hagrid, see you at Hogwarts. And he strode away, head and shoulder taller than anyone else in the packed street. Guess who I saw in Virgin and Burks? Harry asked Ron and Hermione as they climbed the Gringotts step. Malfoy and his father. Did Lucas Malfoy buy anything? Said Mr. Weasley sharply behind him. No, he was selling. So he's worried, said Mr. Weasley with grief satisfaction. Oh, I had loved to get Lucas Malfoy for something. You be careful, Arthur, said Mrs. Weasley sharply as they were blown into the bank and goblin at door. That family trouble don't go biting for off more than you can chew. So you don't think I am a match for Lucas Malfoy, said Mr. Weasley indignantly. But he was distracted almost at once by sight of Hermione's parents, who were standing nervously at the counter that ran all along the great marble hall, waiting for Hermione to introduce them. But you are a muggle, said Mr. Weasley delightedly. We must have a drink. What's that you have got there? Oh, you're changing muggle money, Molly, look. He pointed excitedly at the 10-pound notes in Mr. Granger's hand. Meet you back here, Ron said to Hermione as the Weasleys and Harry were led off to their underground walls by another Gryffindor's goblin. The walls were reached by means of small goblin driver cart that sped along miniature train tracks through the bank's underground tunnel. Harry enjoyed the breathtaking journey down the Weasley's wall, but felt dreadful for worse than he had in Nocturne Alley. It was open. There was a very small pile of silver sickle inside and just one gold gallon. Mrs. Weasley fell right into the corner before slipping the whole lot of her bag. Harry dreaded worse when they reached his wall. And then down and rasping for dreadful of time even further back. Back outside on the marble steps, they all separated. Percy muttered wearily about needing a new quill. Fred and George had spotted their friends from Hogwarts. Lee Jordan, Mrs. Weasley, and Ginny were going to a second-hand rope book. Mr. Weasley was insisting on taking the Gregors off to the Leaky Cauldron for a drink. We'll all meet at Flourish and Bloats in Hor to buy your school books, said Mrs. Weasley, sitting off with Ginny. Not one step down Nocturne Alley, she shouted at twins retreating back. Harry, Ron, and Hermione strolled off along the winding cobbled street, the bag of gold, silver, and bronze jangling carefully. In Harry's pocket was clamoring to be spent, so he brought 3 large strawberry and peanut butter ice cream, which they struck happily as they wandered up the alley, examining the fascinating shop window. Ron gazed longingly at the full set of Charlie Cannon ropes in the window of Quality Quidditch supplies until Hermione tracked them off to buy ink and parchment next door. In Gamble and Jap's Wizarding Joke Shop, they meet Fred George and Lee Jordan, who were stocking up on Dr. Filibuster's fabulous wet start no-hit fireworks. And in a tiny junk shop full of broken wands, lopsided brass scales, and old clocks covered in potion stain, they found Percy deeply immersed in a small and deeply boring book called Perfect Who Gained Power. A study of Hogwarts Perfect and their later career. Ron read aloud of the back cover. That sounds fascinating. Go away, Percy snapped. Of course, he is very ambitious, Percy. He's got into all planned out. He wants to be in Ministry of Magic, Ron told Harry and Hermione in undertone as they felt Percy to it. An hour later, they headed for Flourish and Bloats. They were by no means the only ones making their way to the bookshop. As they approached it, they saw their surprise a large crowd jostling outside the door, trying to get in. The reason for this was proclaimed by a large banner stretched across the upper window. Gilderoy Lockhart will be signing copies of his autobiography Magical Me today 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Can actually meet him. Hermione squealed. I mean, he has written almost the whole book list. Crowd seemed to be made up mostly of witches around Mrs. Weasley's age. A harsh-looking wizard stood at the door, saying, "Calm, please, ladies. Don't push there. Mind the books now." Harry, Ron, and Hermione squeezed inside. A long line wound right to the back of the shop, where Gilderoy Lockhart was signing his book. They each grabbed a copy of the standard book of spell grade 2 and sneaked up the line of to where Rest of the Weasleys were standing with Mr. and Mrs. Granger. "Oh, there you are, Goods," said Mrs. Weasley. She sounded breathless and kept patting her hair. "We'll be able to see him in a minute." Gilderoy Lockhart came slowly into view, seated at a table surrounded by large pictures of his own face, all winking and flashing dazzlingly white teeth at the crowd. The real Lockhart was wearing robes of forgot-me-not blue that exactly matched his eyes. His pointed wizard's hat was set at a jaunty angle on his wavy hairs. A short, irritable-looking man was dancing around taking photographs with a large black camera that emptied puff of purple smoke with every blinding flash. Out of the way there, he sneered at Ron, moving back to get a better shot. "This is for the Daily Prophet." "Big deal," said Ron, rubbing his foot where the photographs had stepped on it. Gilderoy Lockhart heard him. He looked up, he saw Ron, and then he saw Harry. He stared, then he leapt to his feet and positively shouted, "I can't be Harry Potter." The crowd parted, whispered excitedly. Lockhart dived forward, seizing Harry's arm. The crowd burst into applause. Harry's face burned as Lockhart shook his hand for the photographer, who was clicking away madly, watching things smoke over the Weasleys. "Nice big smile, Harry," said Lockhart through his own gleaming teeth. "Together you and I are worth the front page." When he finally let go of Harry's hand, Harry could hardly feel his fingers. He tried to sidle back over to the Weasleys, but Lockhart threw an arm around his shoulder and clapped him tightly to his side. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, waving for a quiet, "what an extraordinary moment this is. Perfect moment for me to make a little announcement. I have been sitting one for some time." When young Harry here stepped into Flourish and Blotts today, he only wanted to buy my autobiography, which I shall be happy to present him now free of charge. Crowd applauded again. He had no idea. Lockhart continued, giving Harry a little shake that made his glasses slip off the end of his nose, that he could shortly be getting much more than my books. Magical me. He and his schoolmates will in fact be getting the real magical me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have given great pleasure and pride in announcing that this September I will be taking up the post of defense against the dark art teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The crowd cheered and clapped. Harry found himself being presented with the entire work of Gilderoy Lockhart struggling slight under their weight. He managed to make his way out of the limelight to the edge of the room where Ginny was standing next to her, mumbled to her, "Trip the book into the cauldron. I'll buy my own." "Bet you love that, didn't you, Potter?" said a voice Harry had no trouble recognizing. He straightened up and found himself face to face with Draco Malfoy, who was wearing his usual scarf. "Famous Harry Potter," said Malfoy. "Can't you go into a bookshop without making the front page?" "Leave him alone. He didn't want all that," said Ginny. It was the first time she had spoken in front of Harry. She was glaring at Malfoy. "Potter, you have got yourself Gryffindor," drawled Malfoy. Ginny went scarlet as Ron and Hermione fought their way over, both clutching snack of Lockhart's book. "Oh, it's you," said Ron, looking at Malfoy as if he were something unpleasant on the sole of his shoe. "You are surprised to see Harry here. Not as surprised as I am to see you in the shop, Weasley," retorted Malfoy. "I suppose your parents will go hungry for a month to pay for all those." Ron went as red as Ginny. He dropped his book into cauldron too and started toward Malfoy. But Harry and Hermione grabbed the back of his jacket. "Ron," said Mr. Weasley, struggling over with Fred and George, "what are you doing? It's too crowded here. Let's go outside." "Well, well, well," Arthur Weasley. It was Mr. Malfoy. He stood with his hand on Draco's shoulder, sneering in just the same way. "Lucius," said Mr. Weasley, nodding coldly. "Busy time at the Ministry, I hear," said Mr. Malfoy. "All those rights. I hope they are paying you overtime." He reached into Guinness cauldron and extracted from a mired and glossy lockhart book a very old, very battered copy of a beginner guide to transfiguration. "Obviously not," Mr. Malfoy said. "Dear me, what's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?" Mr. Weasley flushed darker than either Ron and Ginny have a very different idea of what disgrace the name of Wizard Malfoy, he said. "Clearly," said Mr. Malfoy, his pale eyes trying to Mr. and Mrs. Granger, who were watching apprehensively. "The company you keep, Weasley, and I thought your family could sink no lower." There was a thunder of metal and Guinea's cauldron went flying. Mr. Weasley had thrown himself at Mr. Weasley Malfoy, knocking him backward into a bookshelf. Dozens of heavy spell books came thunder down on all their heads. There was a yell of "Get him, Dad!" from Fred and George. Mrs. Weasley was shrinking. "No, Arthur, no." The crowd stamped backward, knocking more shelves over. "Gentlemen, please, please," cried the assistant, and then louder than all, "Break it up, dear gent, break it." Hagrid was wandering toward them through the sea of books. In an instant, he had pulled Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy apart. Mr. Weasley had a cut lip, and Mr. Malfoy had been hit in the eye by an encyclopedia of Toad Tool. He was still holding Guinea's old Transfiguration book. He thrust it at her in eyes glittering with Malika. "Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you." Pulling himself out of the Hagrid's, he beckoned to Draco and swept from the shop. "Should have ignored them," Arthur said. Hagrid almost lifting Mr. Weasley off his feet as he straightened his robe. "Rotten to crow, the whole family, everyone knows that. No Malfoy worth listening to bad blood. That's what it is. Come on now, let's go out here." The assistant looked as though he wanted to stop them for leaving, but he barely came up to Hagrid's waist and seemed to think better if it. They hurried up the street, the Grangers shaking with fright and Mrs. Weasley beside herself with fury. "A fine example to set for your children, brawling in public. What Gilderoy Lockhart must have brought." "He was pleased," said Fred. "Didn't you hear him? As we are leaving, he was asking that bloke from the Daily Prophet if he had been able to work the flight into his report. Said it was all publicity, but it was a subdued group that headed back to Fireside in the Leaky Cauldron, where Harry and Weasley and all their shopping would be traveled back to borrow use flow powder. They said goodbye to Grangers, who were leaving the pub for the Muggle Street on the other side. Mr. Weasley started to ask them how bus stop worked, but stopped quickly at the look on Mrs. Weasley's face. Harry took off his glasses and put them safely in his pocket before helping him to Floo powder. Indefinite wasn't his favorite way to travel. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.